We are just starting 2026, but already the news is filled with misleading information. Tonight, we go on the offensive to help you prepare for what's coming this year. Welcome back to Big If True Season 2. I'm Molly Thomas. It's a new year, and misinformation continues to spread further and faster than ever. Remember these photos of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in custody wearing different outfits? His capture was real, but the images were not. This simple gray Nike sweatsuit was what President Trump claims he was actually wearing. Will we ever know? Or have you seen fake videos of Ukrainian soldiers like this? Apparently weeping over the war. This and many others turned out to be AI generated. Tonight, we bring in a world expert on misinformation to warn us about what's ahead. Reporter and editor Craig Silverman is no stranger to Big If True. An award-winning journalist, he co-founded the newsletter Indicator. Craig, great to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me back.
Okay, so you've launched a new baby, a startup called Indicator. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so Indicator is a publication, I guess, in the most general sense, but we are exclusively focused really on reporting on different types of digital deception. So there's me and my partner, Alexios Manzarlis, who's based in the US. And so we're doing reporting on scams, on different types of disinformation, on the way big digital platforms are being manipulated, really trying to think about the way our digital information environment is being abused, being manipulated in different ways to spread false information, steal money from people, all of these different kinds of things.
You mentioned digital deception. Why that word and what exactly does it mean?
So I've spent about 10 years looking at sort of different ways the information environment is changing and being abused. And I used to use terms a lot like disinformation, misinformation. I sort of helped coin and popularize the term fake news, unfortunately, which got taken over by Donald Trump. And so, part of this process is really starting, just like my lens of it widened and widened in the sense that a lot of times it was initially about hoaxes or scams, so something that was false or misleading. But we're talking about an information environment that is like really fundamentally being manipulated in so many different ways that we tried to think about a larger term, which was digital deception. And that could not just be the information you're seeing, but different ways that engagement is being faked. So you look at a video and you see, oh, it's got 5 million views, this must be really interesting. But that can be manipulated. So there's lots of different ways to deceive. It's not just about true or false.
So we are being deceived. And do you think that deception has gotten worse?
Unfortunately, I do. And I think that's one of the reasons why I felt like it was the right time to launch a publication that was just focused on this. It is so big and so varied that honestly, I just still don't have enough time to cover all the things I would want to. And
us too.
Yeah, you can relate. And so part of it is, of course, we all have these devices in our pocket, extremely powerful, give us access to tremendous amounts of information, connect us to social networks that are global. And so we have the advantage of all of this information and of being connected and of posting and not just consuming, but also publishing. But that just completely shifts the way information moves and it's created and who sees what. And so now the game for a lot of people, whether they're financially motivated or political partisans or a state-backed actor, for them it's about trying to get that information and to move and persuade people in the ways they want to, earn money from them, get them to change their minds, their point of view, even just, subtly market a legitimate product. We're all sort of kind of under this constant assault of messages and manipulation.
And it only gets more complicated with AI. So it can be AI, but maybe it's more than that?
One of the things about AI that's very game-changing is the ability to just generate huge amount of information in a really trivial amount of time. So in the past, if I wanted to generate a bunch of images and video to kind of deceive people or what have you, I might need to know Photoshop, need to know video editing, and now I just go in and I send a bunch of prompts, and stuff that might have taken, days or weeks and needed expertise to produce, I can do in minutes or hours. And that is a really game-changing scenario for anyone who is trying to deceive others.
One of the scary examples of that has been Grok's AI assistant. Yes. Tell me about that a little bit. Like, what have you seen and what worries you?
Yeah, so Grok is an AI tool. If you've heard of, ChatGPT or things like that, it's similar. It's kind of a chatbot. But the difference with Grok is that it is built into X, which used to be known as Twitter. So that's a fairly big social platform, fairly global. And it and Grok and its parent company, xAI, are all owned by Elon Musk. So you have the richest man in the world with his own social network, with its own AI. And what's been happening in recent weeks, basically as we got over the Christmas break and into the new year, is that people have been using Grok to basically remove the clothing or to kind of partially undress people. And that may sound kind of crazy. It's like, wait a minute, how is a chatbot undressing people, right? And so, for example, Sabrina Carpenter, one of the biggest pop stars in the world, she shared a new photo of hers recently. And underneath that, with Grok, you can basically reply to a photo and tag Grok and say, hey, Grok, what about this? You can ask it a question. You can ask it to do something. And so a lot of accounts have been out there under the photos of women, whether they're celebrities or just regular folks, saying, Grok, put her in a bikini. Grok, put her in a dental floss bikini. Grok, put her in a saran wrap bikini. Grok, take her clothes off. And chatbots are supposed to have rules and guidelines that prevent them from doing things that are abusive or illegal. And Grok just doesn't seem to have them. And so we've got tons and tons of examples of Grok generating what is, arguably non-consensual intimate imagery of women all over the world at a massive pace. There was actually a recent study done that found Grok was generating almost 7,000 of these types of images, on an hourly basis. So the scale, again, of AI, of something abusive like this is just unbelievable.
And yet, nothing is stopping it, Craig. Why?
Yes. Well, this shouldn't happen, I guess, is the first thing we should say. Again, the companies that build these tools are supposed to have guardrails built into them. And they're also supposed to prevent these tools from breaking the law. And there are absolutely laws in many countries around the world about the creation or spread of non-consensual intimate imagery, meaning it's imagery that could be someone naked, could be someone in, a state of undress. And if they are not consenting to the creation or sharing of that image, then that is illegal in a lot of countries, including Canada. We have laws against that.
And yet we still see it online.
And we see it online because, the people who build these tools, they have to build the guardrails in. And as Grok was being used to generate massive amounts of non-consensual imagery of users, Elon Musk was tweeting jokes about it. He did not seem to take it seriously at all. X itself and the company behind Grok have, as of this moment, not really made any kind of real public statement saying, hey, we're sorry, we're looking into this. And so it appears that not only did they not build the guardrails in to start, once this started being used, they didn't seem to really do much to stop it. I did see some accounts that were asking Grok to generate these types of images getting removed and suspended, but there has been nothing overall saying, hey, we're working to stop Grok from doing this.
Do you know anyone, Craig, that has personally been affected by this?
So I haven't met any individual victims, but one person we did interview at Indicator towards the end of last year is a lawyer who's representing a young woman, a teenager in the United States, who had this happen to her. A classmate of hers at her high school created, using an AI tool, non-consensual nude photos of her. And those started to be spread around. You can imagine the experience for someone.
Yeah, what does that do to a young woman's life?
I mean, in the court filings and in what this unnamed person has said it is absolutely a violation. They feel just completely violated, as if it had been like a real photo that had actually, they had taken and shared with someone in confidence being spread. Because it is a sort of virtual or deepfake or AI photo, I don't think it changes the level of trauma for the victims of this. And so to see, for example, Elon Musk trivializing it like it's a joke, when you have women who are being, generated in bikinis and in, non-consensual situations, really feeling the trauma from this is really concerning. And so it is a serious thing. And there are laws against the non-consensual sharing of intimate imagery. But where it's a bit of a gray area is those laws, because they were passed, in this case of Canada, is like, in some cases like 10 years ago, they don't specify virtual or AI or synthetic imagery. And so we're in a bit of a gray area where, yes, the sharing of non-consensual intimate imagery is a criminal offense in Canada federally, but we don't actually know whether that law would hold up in court when it comes to AI-generated images.
Since we recorded this episode, there's been massive global backlash. Grok has restricted some of its undressing features, but there are reportedly still ways users can generate sexualized images. This month, Canada and the United Kingdom have launched investigations into Grok, while Malaysia and Indonesia have blocked the AI assistant. Going beyond just Grok, we know that tech that's misleading people is becoming pervasive, but is it also becoming more legitimate?
This was when we kind of looked back at 2025 and said, what were the trends around digital deception? It was a really depressing year because I think it was a year that I saw digital deception more legitimized and put in front of more people than ever before. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So number one is we kind of started the year in January 2025 with Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Meta, doing a video saying, hey, we're getting rid of the fact checkers we've been working with in the US. And not only that, he said they've been biased, and he said it hasn't worked, and he also said that they were going to roll back other systems that kind of automated look for content to see if any of it violates Meta's policies or laws. And he said, we've been too restrictive, we need more free speech, we're going to roll these back. And so really, in a lot of ways, whether Mark Zuckerberg personally sort of believed those things or not, the reality is that they recognized Donald Trump was coming into power. He has, painted people who are fact checkers or people who are investigating the information environment as censors. And so it was really kind of a bending the knee moment to the incoming Trump administration. And so that started, and that made it more pervasive.
So you think it was getting rid of the fact checkers on Meta was the starting point for people to do whatever they wanted?
It was a signal that, hey, what's been going on for the last 8 or 9 years is changing, and we're going to pull back, and you can kind of do more than you used to be able to do. So the groundwork was laid for people who want to deceive, for people who want to manipulate our digital environment. It was, hey, it's easier to do. And on top of that, all of these companies, these big platforms, they're building their own AI tools to generate images and video. And they are all in a big race to get as many people to adopt them as possible. And so not only were those kind of guardrails removed or rolled back in some ways, people were also given more tools to create more convincing fakes and impersonation videos, and to be able to do that. And so that's a recipe where you're just going to see more of this. And we absolutely did as a result.
So who's responsible for this, Craig? Is it the platforms? Is it us? Is it governments? Who is responsible for this mess that we're in?
Yeah, look, I think there's a shared responsibility here. But when you think about the big actors, at the end of the day, a company like Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, all these different products, they have a huge amount of power and influence over what people, not just in the US or in Canada, but around the world, the information they're seeing, they're sharing, what they're encountering, how they're interacting with each other. And so obviously they're supposed to be adhering to laws. So our governments have responsibility.
The laws are slow
to pass laws, but it's very hard to keep up. And also, look, it's easy to pass a bad law in this area because, as you've mentioned, things move very quickly. So you might go in with good intentions of trying to stop non-consensual intimate imagery, of trying to stop deceptive marketing that steals money from people or scams them. But you could pass a law that ends up being used to actually silence people and censor people. So it is difficult. And in the meantime, into that breach, the lack of action by governments, these companies are able to just kind of do what they want and go out and try to get as much market share as they can.
I'd like to hope that Canada was better, but how are we doing?
I mean, look, I think we are behind in a lot of these areas. And in some ways, you might not want to be first because you could pass a bad law. But the most aggressive regulator of big tech right now is the European Union. One of the big things that happened there was kind of the full effect of what's called the Digital Services Act, which is a law that does a bunch of things, but one of them is it puts more transparency requirements on these platforms to actually share data about the content they're removing, why they're removing it, and other information. And I think if we think about laws that could do the least amount of harm, but also make things a little bit better, that element of forcing transparency and disclosure from these major companies about, hey, who are you selling ads to? And what content are you removing? And making them report and actually be transparent about what they're doing is a really good first step, because they operate at such a scale, it's very hard to get our arms and minds around exactly what's going on there.
Greg, lots to talk about here. You train journalists, you're going to help train us a little bit?
I am. I brought everybody down. Let's try to bring some hope now.
Okay, let's bring everybody back up. But first, let's check out your headlines and reality check with Charlie Buckley.
Imagine walking out to your driveway and seeing this.
I had my old school Mustang literally chained up into the garage, skirted off with my Mustang. Minus the bumper, bro.
There's more to the story than you think. Earlier this month, this clip made the rounds online, showing what's left of a car bumper chained to the owner's house without the rest of the Mustang attached.
Welcome to Brampton.
Plenty of accounts have used the footage to rag on Brampton and to complain about the rise in auto thefts all across Ontario. Like this one, saying you can't make this stuff up. Actually, maybe you can. The footage comes from an account known for posting comedy videos, and the original Instagram post even has the word skit in the description. The clip itself is also a little strange. I mean, who loops a chain through the part where the headlight goes? It's no secret that Ontarians are frustrated by a rise in auto thefts in recent years. But this year, auto thefts are actually down 30% in Peel Region alone. And as for wilder videos like this, sometimes people are just yanking your chain. The internet is abuzz with allegations against an unnamed food delivery app, claiming that the company behind it is meddling with tips for drivers, and that people paying for priority delivery are getting scammed. Posts from a so-called anonymous whistleblower spread like wildfire online. But not so fast. There's more going on here. Breakdowns by outlets like The Verge and Hard Reset found that the original post was probably written by AI, as were the so-called internal company documents shared with journalists. Uber's president denied the claims, and one of the co-founders of DoorDash said there were no policies like it at his company. Delivery apps have been criticized in the past for the working conditions and pay of their drivers. But it's important to think twice before you take an anonymous and outrageous social media post like this at face value. And finally, deep in northern Ukraine, near the site of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, rumors are circulating of a strange sighting. Wild dogs that appear to be growing blue fur. Have 40 years of radiation brought forth a colorful new species of mutants? Thankfully, no. It turns out the images are real. They were shared by a humanitarian group that looks after the animals that roam near the nuclear plant. The periwinkle pooches were spotted earlier this fall, but there's no evidence that radiation has anything to do with it. Most likely what you're seeing is stains on the dog's fur from some kind of chemical, possibly from the bright blue liquid found in things like abandoned porta potties. And don't worry, one expert told Snopes that whatever's all over them is probably harmless, and the dogs appear healthy. If you want to learn more about the dogs of Chernobyl and the work to help keep them safe, you can check out the website for the Clean Futures Fund. That's your reality check. Now you're in the know.
Coming soon on Big If True, we talk about astroturfing. The name comes from the artificial grass that's used on some sports fields, but it's also a term used to describe fake grassroots campaigns. Could you be a target? Welcome back. I'm here with Craig Silverman, co-founder of the new newsletter Indicator, and of course, a world-renowned disinformation expert. Great to have you.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, I want to know about how you do your job, Craig. Like, how are you sourcing and seeping through the digital deception out there?
Yeah, you kind of have to dive into some of the worst parts of the internet, I guess, is one part of it. And so, I mean, the fancy term that people sometimes use is monitoring. So I have certain topics I'm really interested in. Like, we've done a lot of coverage of AI nudifiers, the tools that can sort of undress people. And so we think about keywords and we think about companies and tools and websites we've already found, and we might go and search and look for those on a regular basis. So a lot of it is just kind of watching, you know, on different platforms, what people are talking about.
What about specific verification tools?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the core stuff around visual verification, the most basic thing is reverse image search.
Okay.
If people aren't familiar with this, it's basically like, you know how you can go to a Google or another search engine and type in words and it will find matches for those words. Well, you can also search by image. So you can upload an image, or increasingly, just actually with your phone's camera in things like the Google app, you can actually shoot it at something and it will search that image. And so it will either look for exact copies of that image or maybe other photos of that person or other examples of that sign you might have scanned. And that really helps us when people are sharing images.
I know you've been teaching journalists for years, and I assume that curriculum has changed and changed and changed. So you got to retrain. Yeah. What do you find is really changing in 2026 in terms of new tools that we have to be on top of?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that is really a big challenge for anyone trying to verify the digital environment is, of course, the rise of synthetic media. So, you know, when I was teaching how to kind of verify potentially AI-generated images a few years ago, I would point people to things like, well, you know, look at the hands, maybe there's 6 fingers on it. Look at their eyes, they might not be even. Do they have jewelry? You know, one earring, it doesn't match another. And the reality is these models have gotten so good that those tips from a few years ago, they're pretty much not really going to work. Unless the model has done a really bad job and the person generating it didn't catch something, the fact is a lot of the stuff looks pretty real at this point. And so then it's about actually going to a lot of the fundamentals that have been around for a long time, which is, okay, if this is showing a person, can I figure out who this person is, when and where this video or this image took place? Can I find other people who were there to corroborate it? You actually have to kind of get out of the digital realm in some ways and go and talk to humans.
So Craig, you're telling people to get offline and go engage with the real world. Like, what does that practically look like?
Yeah, I think for the average person, outside of an investigation is, taking time away from your devices and really thinking about that and thinking about how it makes you feel to spend more time on them. But when it comes to the investigative element, if there is a real person being depicted in images or a video or a real event in a location, then it might mean going and calling and finding that person and saying, hey, were you here on that day? It might mean actually looking at that location in real life, or if you can't, going to things like Google Street View, where you can view images of what that street corner or what have you look like. And so it's really dangerous to get tied up too much in tools when a lot of times it's our eyes, our ears, or our mouth going and talking to people that actually helps us figure things out a little bit more. The fundamental thing is not rushing to judgment in a lot of cases, because stuff will seem convincing today.
I'm thinking ahead to the rest of the year, 2026. I know that misinformation, disinformation, flourishes around big events that happen.
Yeah.
Is there anything on your radar that people should be thinking about?
Well, the big ones are, as you say, big events. So what do we have this year? Well, we've got the Olympics coming up. We've got a World Cup as well. And, in both of these cases, like, there's Canadian involvement. The World Cup, it's going to be in Canada.
Right, it's here.
So that presents the opportunity for foreign people to potentially kind of create some chaos and what have you. And so be aware of that. But I think with the Olympics, again, oftentimes you do see state-backed actors trying to influence social media discussion and perception around things, so be aware of that. Elections is another big area. I believe we have a mayoral election in
Toronto.
So, just being aware, these are the moments when people are really sort of fighting, supporting, being partisans in genuine ways, but then that's also the opportunity for either domestic or foreign kind of operators to try and manipulate people. And so on those big events, just don't rush to judgment. When you see a clip of something outrageous an Olympian has said or done or something like that, you don't necessarily need to make up your mind right away. You can take time. You could go and get out of that one place you've seen it, that one social platform. Maybe go search online. Go to a regular news site you go to. Do they have anything about it? So not, moving laterally from one place to another to compare and contrast is a really good thing that people can do as well.
Greg, we've talked about what scares you. Does anything give you hope?
Yeah, I'm always find hope in the people who sort of do work in this area, various researchers. I often find hope in people like that teenager in the US who was a victim of non-consensual, image sharing and decided to stand up and, not just sort of kind of cower away, but actually file a lawsuit against the company that makes the tool that was used to do that. And so I find hope in those moments. And I think also in Canada, it is a crazy time right now. Lots of crazy things are going on in the US and elsewhere. And I feel like Canada overall, we're keeping our heads about us a little bit. And so I'm proud to be here and to be working from here. And I think that, for 2026, that's the message Canadians should take, is to hold on, to hold fast, to not lose your mind and rush to judgment on this or rush to share that. We can sort of pay attention and have our unique perspective and not be forced into things.
And your work at Indicator is helping people, so we appreciate you bringing your expertise here.
Thank you for having me.
This season on Big If True, you might notice that things look a little different. That's because we're out of our regular studio and working in new locations, close to the stories and closer to you across Ontario. Join us every Sunday night as we tackle an onslaught of misinformation and disinformation. What's real? What's not? Let's figure it out together.
Worried about misinformation overload? Come to Big If True to find out what's real and what's not. Check out our Instagram page for exclusive content and subscribe to our YouTube channel or watch full episodes on our website. Email us at bigiftrue@tvo.org if you have a burning question or brilliant idea. Big If True, fighting misinformation one story at a time.
Well, we have quite a year ahead of us. Hope you've gained some insights to prepare you for the onslaught of bad information. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next Sunday or anytime online.